Hello everyone. My name is Strange, and I believe that people should know the truth. The unexplained appearance of a circle on the field on December 31, 2013 in the vicinity of the city of Salinas, California, caused a stir among ufologists. The mysterious drawing was discovered by professional photographer Julie Belanger, who flew around California by helicopter on New Year's Eve in search of a spectacular shot. On the evening of the 30th, two friends drove past a field near the city of Salinas. They noticed strange flashes on the field, stopped the car, and ran to the place where something strange was happening. When they reached it, they saw paths of crushed cereals, that is, the same circle from the ground. Currently, the authorities have put guards around the strange object and are trying to do everything possible to find out at least something about its origin. Especially for you, I have collected all the available information about this mystical phenomenon and will analyze all currently available versions of their origin. What do we know about the origin of these circles? Circles appear all over the world. There are reports that they have been seen in Russia, Japan, America, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, Bulgaria, France, Spain, Germany, South Africa, and Israel. And this list is far from complete. The first mention of circles appearing on grain fields has been documented for a very long time. They were described in Holland as early as 1503 and in southern England in 1618 to 1680. An ancient document was discovered in the British Museum, which indicated the diabolical origin of the drawings. In the English folklore records of 1618, there is a mention of certain circles, as if trampled, in the grain fields. There are similar observations of the miracle in the documents of 1680, and two circles discovered in England in the Salisbury area in 1914 remain to this day. And in 1686, Robert Plot, a professor of chemistry at Oxford University, wrote the book The Natural History of Staffordshire, in which he tried to find some kind of higher principle to explain the phenomenon of field circles. Some researchers who lived at the time of the raft assured others, and probably themselves, that circles appear as a result of deer mating games, cattle urination, and the most incredible reason, because of the pranks of some demonic forces. However, Professor Plot, offering his theory, did not completely reject these myths, only noting that the reason may well be the demons, which are so much talked about. The cunning scientist also assumed that the circles were the work of human hands or maybe trampled by animals. However, after much reasoning, Raft still wrote that this must be the result of multiple circular lightning bursts in the clouds. The cloud emits a beam of energy that hits the ground and leaves a circular footprint. But then what about the traces of a non-circular shape? The professor also found an explanation for them. He explained their origin by the fact that sometimes lightning, breaking away from a cloud, takes on a rectangular shape. Slavic peoples also knew about witch circles and devil's spit. They knew, but they did not think much about the origin of the incomprehensible drawings. Some of the knowledge about these phenomena has come down to us in the form of myths, legends, tales, and even fairy tales. The science that studies the origin of crop circles is Cereology. There is an interesting myth about the origin of this name. Ceres was the goddess of the Romans, who personified the earth and fertility. Wheat and barley were sacred to her. She was always depicted with a crown made of wheat spikelets. Ceres' daughter Kore was the goddess of bread, who was the personification of the grain itself. As the legend says, she was abducted from Earth by Hades, Pluto from the Romans, at a time when she was picking flowers in the field. In Sicily, Crete, Arcadia, and Attica, it was even said that craters or depressions in the fields were the place where the king of the underworld entered the earth. In the 16th century, crop circles were associated with fear. It used to be said that by stepping on such a ring, a person would fall into a trap and be doomed to dance with spirits forever, even after death. It was believed that these were places where magical winds dropped their victims. These versions date back to the time of Aristotle. Today, when the phenomenon became widely known to the public, Russian peasants and foreign farmers began to remember that circles appeared a long time ago, even in the 30s of the 20th century. And some see evidence of the antiquity of the phenomenon in medieval engravings depicting witch rings. Many people tell how they played among similar circles as a child, in the 30s, 40s, 50s, and even the 20s, and no one, as they recall, considered these circles to be something out of the ordinary. So, Mona Beswick, whose childhood was spent in Ware in the county of Hertfordshire, England, recalls, "These circles were always in the fields and no one paid attention to them. We children loved to play there, although the owners of the crops drove us away." John Huston also saw field patterns as a child. It was during the war in the road Wiltshire. This is how he conveys his impressions. The circles had very clear outlines. The ears inside the circles were pressed tightly to the ground, as if smoothed and turned in one direction, parallel to the outer boundary of the circle. The locals perceived their appearance as something inevitable. And they also believed that if circles appeared, then hard times were just around the corner. And then the times were really hard, the war. One woman from Sussex recalls playing among the field patterns during the war. "I am surprised when I hear the statement that these circles among the crops began to appear only recently. I clearly remember how 50 years ago we children played in the field on such circles. There were 2 fields where these circles appeared every 3 or 4 years. The circles were close to each other and connected by paths. The paths were very narrow and did not go straight but looped. At that time, we thought that the wheat had been trampled by German paratroopers. The adults didn't pay any attention to these strange places. No one even tried to photograph these circles or report them to the newspapers." The first such figure on the field appeared in the UK in 1966. And then, until December 1973, there were no figures. Only later was a similar figure seen in Australia, followed by 7 more laps. This was explained by the result of hurricane winds or kangaroo tracks. Later, these figures were called nests of plates, perhaps because of the burnt marks on the ground. While all these details were discovered, the locals noticed strange night lights and screaming sounds. Soon the circles were spotted in Switzerland. By that time, some locals had learned to distinguish real circles from those depicted by their fellow jokers. The main criterion is bent, but not broken plant stems. The fact is that in the so-called man-made circles, the wheat stalks are always broken or fractured. Circles of a different origin contain plants with a modified slope of stem growth. The plant is not broken. It continues to grow at an angle to the plane of the earth. This is the main mystery. Thus, the local population distinguishes the pranks of pranksters from mysterious phenomena in the fields of cereals. Until the end of the 70s, the circles remained just simple circles appearing singly. The cereals in them were always stacked clockwise. Then, they began to appear in groups arranged in a certain way. In 1986, people began to encounter outer rings around some of them, and for the first time, the lodging of stems counterclockwise. In 1987, a circle surrounded by 2 rings appeared. Circles with 4 or more rings appeared subsequently. At the same time, the first not quite round drawing appeared, a branch on one side of a simple circle surrounded by a single ring. The explosion of interest in connection with the numerous testimonies occurred in the early 90s. All circles that occur in cornfields have a diameter of more than 3 to 70 meters or more. In the period from 1980 to 1990, more than 1,000 such circles were observed in only a few counties of England. In some cases, they are surrounded by several, up to 4, outer rings. In the 1990s, these circles became another attraction for tourists. At that time, over 500 new circles appeared in Europe. Tourists from all over the world came to these places to see the wonder of nature. Some farmers even fenced their fields and sold tickets to this mysterious show. However, often the mysterious circles turned out to be only a crude fake. The edges of the circles were uneven, the stems at the bend were broken, and the paths lines connecting the circles were crooked. In 1987, surprised Earthlings found a whole message in one of the fields. "We are not alone." However, skeptics immediately noticed that if aliens had left it, they would probably have written, "You are not alone." As for the circles themselves, the real ones, that is, the drawing in the margins has never been repeated. In addition, the patterns have always varied in size, from several dozen or more meters in diameter. And in 1990, there was a sharp leap in the transformation of drawings in the fields. Huge complexes of circles with branches, called pictograms, appeared in several places on the planet at once. Since then, pictograms have become more and more complex, moving further away from simple geometric shapes. The ears of wheat crumpled into the shape of smiling faces, flowers, and whole messages. Very often, crop circles told the plots of many myths of antiquity. Over time, field patterns based on the laws of mathematics began to appear. After examining several field drawings, astronomer and Boston University professor Gerald Hawkins noticed that circles, triangles, and other geometric shapes are arranged according to mathematical calculations. For example, in the drawing with the inner and outer circles, the area of the outer circle was exactly 4 times the area of the inner one. This indicates that regardless of who created these crop circles, he is very familiar with the hitherto little-known theorems of Euclid. Crop circles usually appear without witnesses in deserted places. However, with the advent of civilization, there are fewer and fewer such places, and there is plenty of evidence of peeping at the process of formation of intricate patterns on the field. Kuban is a magnet for field patterns. Most of all Russian crop circles have appeared and are appearing in the Krasnodar territory. The most common routes are Yesk, Novokubansk, Labinsk. Circles in local fields appear more strict in geometry and are often located in close proximity to roads. Perhaps that is why circles in these places are often found on the very first morning. Interestingly, according to the observations of scientists and researchers of the riddles of circles, the area of circles runs slightly to the north and approximately parallel to the distribution zone of the ancient Caucasian dolmens. Moreover, a significant part of all circles found in the world, as a rule, also coincide with the distribution area of dolmens. At the end of June 1999, an 18.5 meters diameter circle with an inner circle was discovered in Novokubansk in a wheat field. Since June 17, 2004, in the village of Znamenskoye, Russia, the drawings in the margins have turned out to be the largest hitherto discovered in the Russian Federation. Let's try to summarize the existing versions of the origin of circles. UFOs and aliens. Probably the most popular version of the origin of crop circles is associated with the appearance of aliens from other planets who leave circles as their business card. Adherents of this theory believe that the crop circles were left by incoming spaceships that wanted to convey some kind of message to us. As an indirect confirmation of this guess, some eyewitnesses claim that they saw glowing objects similar to UFOs with their own eyes and heard some strange sounds coming from the fields. Moreover, sometimes a mysterious jelly-like substance characteristic of UFO landing sites is found inside the circles, sometimes strange variations of the radiation background. Burned out by the light. In August 2001, 2 people in England claimed to have witnessed a mysterious phenomenon. Late at night, they noticed columns of bright light descending on a grain field. When the glow stopped, they found a new pattern in the place where the light fell. Wind. One of the most well-founded scientific theories is the theory of air vortices. Swirling wind currents attract trapped air to the ground, bending the ears. Each circle appears due to the spiral movement of energy following the flying objects. This explains to some extent why many field patterns appear in the southern part of England, where air vortices often form. However, the question remains unresolved as to how, in just a few seconds, a micro-tornado creates such complex and symmetrical patterns. Traces of airplanes and helicopters. According to another theory, the drawings in the fields appear as a result of air currents created by airplanes and helicopters, which crush plant stems during landing and takeoff. The energy of the Earth. Some researchers of this strange phenomenon believe that the planet Earth itself creates an energy still unknown to the world, as a result of which these circles appear. It could be something like electromagnetic radiation. Scientists have discovered that there is a strong magnetic field inside and outside the figure. In these places, the compass needle cannot determine which is north and which is south, and many people hear a strong ringing in their ears. Perhaps some energy is coming directly from the Earth. This can be natural energy when fungi damage plant stems, or side energy, that appeared as a result of the explosion of many bombs during the First and Second World Wars. Sometimes mysterious sounds can be heard from inside the circles. Buzzing, rattling, ultrasounds. Sometimes they can be recorded on a tape recorder. But it is not uncommon for the equipment in the circles to categorically refuse to work. Lightning. Some researchers adhere to the hypothesis of the physical origin of crop circles. Let's say a lightning-like discharge strikes the ground vertically. There is a microwave effect, as a result of which the bases of plant stems soften. The stems lean towards the ground, but do not break. In this case, the electromagnetic field penetrates into the plant, and if it turns out to be strong enough, creates explosive holes in the joints of the stems. The same thing will happen if you put potatoes in a microwave oven in uniform. Without first piercing the peel, the potato will burst. These blast holes are clearly visible on the plant stems of many crop circles. Reasonable wheat. Are circles collective meaningful actions of the ears? Why do we deny plants the right to their own opinion? The fact that there is a constant exchange of information between trees, shrubs, and grass. Few biologists argue with this anymore. But how far can such an exchange of information go, and can it not spontaneously, or with some external influence, result in the appearance of signals, information, already intended for non-plants? Perhaps the plant world is just asking us not to ruin it for nothing. Intelligent ants. Are circles collective meaningful actions of ant civilizations? If this is the case, then mysterious crop circles are made by very intelligent ants of a species, unknown to modern science, in order to establish contacts with people. The original version was presented by one of the UK's leading entomologists, Professor Robert Eastwall. After checking soil samples at the places where the circles appeared, Robert Eastwall quickly found confirmation of his theory. Traces of ants' activity were allegedly clearly visible on the ground. The complexity of the patterns they left behind indicated that they were not simple, but very intelligent creatures. Entomologists have long known that some insect species, especially bees and ants, use body language and body movements to communicate. However, there had never been a single case of them leaving written messages on Earth before. For a whole year, Eastwall and several linguists worked on deciphering these letters. One of them, already translated, allegedly reads, "Hello, don't be afraid of us. We'll be here soon." And here is the version with ordinary ants. According to the Washington Post, California researcher Don Scott observed the appearance of mysterious circles in rye fields in southern England. Among his equipment were a radiation detector, infrared vision devices, cameras, and movie cameras. Don Scott proceeded from the well-known fact that the presence of radioactive isotopes was recorded on the cereal lying in circles. Therefore, before installing his equipment, he identified with the help of the radiation detector areas of the rye field that exceed the usual radiation level. After 2 weeks of searching, he found such an anomaly, and the wait began. A few days later, at 1 hour and 50 minutes in the morning, the automatic infrared camera turned on. In his night vision device, Scott watched as the ears of rye began to bend, forming a circle. Enlarging the image, the researchers saw small creatures scurrying between the ears. These were not aliens from outer space, not mystical creatures from ancient Celtic legends. The builders of the circles turned out to be ants, one of the species of insects with a primitive social organization. What makes ants walk in circles? According to Scott, the direction of the ants' movement is determined by the Earth's magnetic field. The theory of the American scientist deserves attention since ants, as well as crop circles, are found on all continents of the planet. Kangaroos in a trance. In 2009, Australians surprised the world with their version, announcing that crop circles are trampled by kangaroo addicts. However, the paradoxical, if not anecdotal, version does not explain in any way how kangaroo addicts can make perfectly even shapes in the fields, besides appearing not only in their habitats but also far around the world. Created by man. The easiest way to explain the appearance of mysterious circles is the trick of an ordinary person who created them for fun, or in order to further confuse scientists. Many people have repeatedly stated that they made these drawings with their own hands. In September 1991, British residents David Chorley and Douglas Bauer confessed to creating circles. According to them, they made the first pattern in 1978, inspired by photographs of tracks left on grain fields by agricultural machinery. The group of creators of crop circles, founded by John Landberg, demonstrated that it is possible to make almost any circles, including analogs of those that are recognized by cereologists as authentic. There is a well-known drawing depicting the Firefox browser logo made on the field by a group of students from the USA. Joe Nickel, a senior researcher at the Committee for the Scientific Investigation of Supposedly Paranormal Phenomena, claims that the circles have all the signs of fakes. They are concentrated in southern England. They become more complex over time. The skill of the creators is growing. The creators hide and remain anonymous. Objections to this theory of origin are based on the fact that the closest studies of some of the figures show some complex changes in the structure of plants that cannot be reproduced in the field. In addition, the complexity and large size of some formations are indicated, which does not correlate well with the short time interval, one night, required for their creation. To prove their involvement, they invited a BBC film crew to the field, where they used ropes and smoothboards to create a new drawing from the ears. Researcher Joe Nickel believes that crop circles are undoubtedly the work of man. Honing their skills, the creators created more and more complex figures each time. But nevertheless, man could not create all the circles of the world. Cereologist Colin Andrews admits that 80% of all circles may have been made by man, but the remaining 20% are most likely created by some higher power. Drawings of the margins, the super business of the 21st century. Fans of joking, having drawn unearthly circles on the local field. Soon after the exposure, suddenly became super popular people. Having confirmed and practiced their talent to imitate aliens, the field artists continue their craft, but for a lot of money. Thus, a group of new art artists, Rod Dixon, Will Russell, and John Lundberg, received several orders around the world. Their clients include manufacturers of computer chips, cars, and digital technologies. The creators do not disclose the cost of their works. However, it is known that everyone's fortune is estimated at several $100,000. How it is done? Versions. Luminaries of agricultural science assure that if an autumn-ish shock dose of ammonium nitrate is introduced in the winter field within the circle, then from such overfilling with nitrogen, plants within the circle will grow faster and achieve such growth that thin stems will burn from the slightest breeze. You can lay them with a rope in a spiral. This is exactly the picture observed in crop circles. This was demonstrated by the journalist. However, it is not clear how, with this method, it is possible to create shapes with clear borders and several multidirectional layers of the substrate. Meaden put forward his theory based on the weather factor. Unknown atmospheric phenomena, such as electrified vortices, make circles. According to Colin Andrews, who has been researching crop circles for 17 years, about 20% of them were formed due to vortex disturbances in the Earth's magnetic field, and the rest were created by human hands. He believes that some mysterious shift in the electromagnetic field creates an electric current that bends the ears in a circle. Physicists who studied the newly appeared drawing of a smoking green man stated, "Local Joker's craftsmen have mastered a new way of drawing in the fields. The absence of guiding ropes, bar stools, and boards, with which such drawings are usually performed, indicate that Earthlings have mastered high technologies in the laborious business of fooling humanity." As physicists explain, the marks marking the contours of the drawing are made with a laser. Then, with the help of directed microwaves, the grain stalks are heated and bent to the ground. And when they cool down, they remain in this position. But these are just versions on our channel. We disclose not only versions, but also classified materials. We already have a video about circles and the disclosure of secret materials about them. You can see the link in the corner of the screen. Subscribe to the channel and send me your stories related to aliens by email. You will find contacts in the About the Channel section. Together, we will force the authorities of all countries to disclose all the information they have. After all, people should know the truth.